Hello again! Welcome back to Bachelor Bistro, and we've got another really classic dish from the French style of bistro cooking that you'll see in a lot of Parisian restaurants, bistro style restaurants. We're going to make today, and that is steak au poivre. And basically what that is a steak that is cooked with black peppercorns and a red wine sauce. So in order to create that dish and the sauce that accompanies it, we've laid out our ingredients here, and we're always going to start with that so that you can get a quick rundown of what you need to be prepared to make this dish. So, of course, olive oil, very important to fry. We're going to do frying in a skillet again, which bistro style that's the way to go. It's quick and fast and easy, and you can cook these up in no time. Part of our sauce is going to include some red wine. The wine that I've chosen is a Garnacha, otherwise known in France as Grenache, which is a really nice, deeply, intensely fruity wine, either from France or Spain. This one, in Spain, you'll see a lot of Grenache, they call Garnacha. Either way, Garnacha Spanish, Grenache French. So we're going to work with that because I love the way that pairs with a nice red meat, a steak in particular. Of course, we need for steak au poivre, which one of the main ingredients is cracked black peppercorns, and we're going to crack these, and I'll show you how to do that. And they are going to encrust our steak. We have a nice little steak fillet that we're going to encrust in black peppercorns. We are going to, of course, again, the magical shallot. We're going to use about 2 tablespoons of shallot in this dish. We've got what you see right here, which is an added ingredient because I love steak with mushrooms, and we're going to put it's about a cup of chopped mushrooms into the sauce, and they're going to be laid out on top of our steak. The beurre, you gotta have the beurre. The butter is also in there. Some salt. Always something goes wrong. The salt is important. You need some salt. We just do a pinch. We don't put a lot of salt because we don't want to get a heart attack or nothing like that. So we always just do like a little pinch of salt here and there. And there's lots of different herbs and spices you can add. This one I'm going to try some basil leaves in the sauce. And that forms the ingredients that you're going to need in preparation. Oh, you do need a steak. Get a steak, because this is steak au poivre. You need a steak for this dish, and we'll be back to get this thing rolling in just a second. Okay, I thought I would show you how to crack up some peppercorns. We've got a little mix here of both black and white peppercorns, about 2 tablespoons. Let's just say that for the sake of saying something, I suppose. I think that's about 2 tablespoons, maybe a tablespoon and a half. We're going to do 1 steak tonight. This is dinner for one. Anytime you have a recipe that you look at the ingredients. If you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, you always multiply those ingredients by what you need. But this is about close to 2 tablespoons of peppercorns. And that's what we're going to need to coat our 1 steak. Because as steak au poivre is necessary, you're forming a crust, a black pepper, a pepper crust, because it's not all black pepper. You can do black pepper, but we've got both white and black pepper in here. So this was going to be a little tricky, but what we're going to do is we're going to take the flat of our knife and we are going to pound these peppercorns. So immediately this is not cooperating with me, but you get the idea. What we want to do is, if you see that right there, this down in here, we want to use our chef's knife, the flat of our chef's knife, to smash and crush. This is, you know, if you've got like issues right now, you know, you want to work out some, you know, blow off some steam. Nothing like cracking some peppercorns with the flat of your knife. Another good way to go, just rethinking the whole cracked peppercorns things, is that another good way to go is to cover your peppercorns with a paper towel and use a fry pan, the flat side of the fry pan. That's a nasty old fry pan. And those peppercorns are in there, trust me. And we're gonna smash them darn peppercorns. Oh, those darn peppercorns. We're gonna smash them with our pan. And you can see what happens as a result of all that smashing. We could do that a few more times. But they're nice and cracked and smashed up almost to where we want them to be. Maybe a tiny bit more, a tad bit more. But that's another way to go, and that might even be better. Alright, we've got all our ingredients and utensils laid out in the proper fashion here, with our cooking line laid out. Everything, as you can see, from our steak, our nice steak fillet right there. You can see that nice red juicy steak that we're going to cook our steak au poivre with. We've got our shallots, our black pepper, our butter, salt, mushrooms, red wine in the background back over there. Our herbs, basil, we're going to use tonight. We have our utensils, our chef's knife, our serving spoon, our wooden spoon, and our butter all laid out and ready to go. And that's going to help us get started. Move over here to our skillet and get that flame going. It's not, of course, the flame is, yeah, okay, it's cooperating with me. You see the flame? We want that nice and high because we want that pan, as I've said before, to get nice and hot, which is the way to do our bistro style cooking, with a very hot skillet. And once that heats up, we're going to add the olive oil to it, and I'm going to show you the steak here. What we're going to do with the steak is add a pinch of salt on either side. You can even rub that in there. That's not a bad thing to do. We want that steak to get nice and primed and ready to go. Adding some salt to it will help us break down the meat a little bit and add some flavor and make it ready to cook properly. So that's a nice little steak fillet, about 3/4 of a pound. And again, this is for one serving, so if you want to do 2 steaks, you can feel free to do that. But this is steak au poivre with 1 steak, a bachelor dinner for 1. If you want to do this for 2, just double up on everything. Alright, let's get back to our pan. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the pan. And we're going to, once again, we're going to swirl. We're going to squirrel. Yeah, we're going to swirl and coat the pan with that olive oil because we want it to be nicely coated. Right before we put our steak in there, we want it to heat up to the proper temperature. So about a minute or 2 to let that pan heat up first, and then put your oil in there and get it nice and hot before you add the steak. Now back over to what we're doing with the steak itself. We want to, this is steak au poivre, and the whole meaning of that French term is to coat that steak in black, crushed, cracked peppercorns. Black pepper, white pepper. So we're going to give it a nice little crust on either side. Get those peppercorns on the steak, and that gives it both texture and flavor. And once we do that, we want to get it into the pan. And there we go. We got a nice hot pan and some sizzling and crackling going on. We're going to fry that. Again, this is a very thin cut of steak. You can use a thicker cut if you want. But this is bistro cooking, so thin cuts and simple cuts of steak are what it's called for. If you want to use a nicer cut of steak, that's up to you, but you don't have to. You can go low end here. And so we're going to fry this up. Almost disaster there, but that wasn't too bad. And we're going to fry this up. You got to be really careful. Maybe turn down the flame a little bit. You don't want to create a kitchen fire. But we're going to fry this up about 2 minutes on either side. I like my steak a little rare. And then we're going to flip it over, cook it on the other side. And we're going to start the sauce, and I'll be back to show you that. Alright, so we got that nicely cooked on both sides, and I'm going to take that, if you can see, on the other side. Nicely cooked steak. So we got that meat stock in the pan. You can see it in there. And we're going to put some butter. We're going to start with 2 tablespoons of butter into the pan. And get that melting off. Again, we're going to be careful. We don't want to burn the butter. We just want to melt it down, and we also want to get that meat stock off of the pan. That's the good stuff. That's what we want to do. We want to heat that up and get everything going. We're going to turn this up. We got our butter melted. So we're going to get our flame going here. And, of course, then we end the magical shallots into the pan. That's about 2 tablespoons of shallots, and we do not want to burn those shallots. What we want to do, we want to wilt them. We want to just want to cook them, stir everything in here, the butter, get everything to commingle, the butter, and scrape off some of that meat stock that's on it's kind of stuck to the pan there, so you got to work it a little bit. You got to scrape and stir. And man, as soon as you smell those shallots, as soon as you get a whiff of those shallots, which I'm getting right now it's time to thin this out and put in about a quarter cup of wine. Red wine. I'm going to get that in there. Continue to stir and mix. And at this point, everything is nice and hot and bubbly. We don't want to cook it off too fast. We want to cook it nice and slow. So we're going to turn our flame down to a simmer and just get that to mix nicely in there. You got the red wine, and you can smell that coming off. We're going to throw, as is my habit to do that, about a pinch of salt goes in there. Liven things up. Salt really does, for whatever reason. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist, but for whatever reason, and I'm sure you'll find the reason online. But salt brings the flavor up in just about everything. It interacts chemically with whatever it is you're cooking. Hey, Punk, thanks for knocking that over for me. I'll just get that later. Mr. Punk is taking care of business over there on the kitchen table. He's waiting for this dish to finish. So we want to cook our wine a little bit. We're going to cook it off. We want it to thicken. We want this sauce to thicken a little bit and cook off. And as you cook off the wine with the shallots and the butter and the meat sauce, the meat flavor that the meat stock that is left in the pan, you start to smell. I mean, if you're standing here like I am, you're smelling amazing things. The shallots, the wine, the butter, the meat. All of this is bubbling and mixing together and coming off really nicely. Just keep stirring and thicken that up a little bit. And once we get it set to a certain point, we've let about a couple minutes go by now since we started this. And now we're going to throw our mushrooms in because we want to cook our mushrooms along with the sauce. And the purpose of that is the mushrooms will start to soak up that sauce, and they will cook and soften and start to ripen, and you'll see immediately that the sauce is disappearing because the mushrooms, they're like sponges. They're soaking up that sauce. And when we get this to a certain point, we are going to put our steak au poivre, our fried steak, back into the pan and cook everything together. Now, so we've now soaked up and sopped up a lot of that sauce. So now's the time to continue this a bit further by putting in a little more butter. I'm going to turn up our flame. I want this butter to melt fast. So we're going to put 2 more tablespoons of butter, all told 4 tablespoons of butter into this mixture. And we're going to get all of that going. And we're going to melt that butter down along with our beautiful mushrooms that are starting to cook off here. Everything is going to cook together. We're now up to about 4 or 5 minutes cooking time here on this sauce. And once we get this the butter melted down, we're going to throw in the rest of our wine. We started with about a 1/4 cup of red wine. We're going to do another 1/4 cup. Get that in there. Now it's sizzling and bubbling. And once we get that, now we're going to make sure our flame is down on a simmer. Again, we don't want to cook this too fast. We want to slow cook it, not like for an hour. We're just going to slow cook it for a few minutes here, because that's all you're going to need. That wine is, the pan is nice and hot. The mushrooms are soaking up the sauce, and everything is mixing, commingling, integrating. All these flavors and textures are mixing nicely. The mushrooms are cooking, softening. We've got our shallots going, and in about a minute or two here, I'm going to put a little more salt, another pinch of salt in here, since I've added more wine and butter. And now we got a nice thick sauce. It's really starting to get there. It's only going to need a few more minutes of cooking time. We are going to put get all those scrapings, all those shallots, everything back in there. We want everything we've got in there. We don't want to waste a drop, an ounce of what we've got in that pan. Shallots and butter and mushrooms, everything. We want it all in there. We want to mix it all together. We want it to cook and cook off and thicken. And what we're going to do next is we're going to add our steak au poivre that's already been fried up into the pan. We're going to cover this, and then we're going to let everything cook and mix together for about 3 minutes. Let it simmer, and what you're going to see is that sauce will thicken further, and it will be fantastico. Okay, we've let about 3 minutes go by and let our sauce simmer in there with the steak. And oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Got a nice thick red wine sauce with butter and mushrooms. Now we're going to sprinkle our herbs on top. This is the dried basil. Just get a little bit of that going on in there. Do a little bit of that. And we're ready to go with this, I think. Steak au poivre, red wine mushroom sauce. And we're going to take our steak out of here. Move it over to the plate. Now, since this is Bachelor Bistro 4-1, we're just going to let that all hang out. We're going to let that, oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Nice mushroom red wine sauce on our steak au poivre. You can smell it too, man. That is coming up nice and rich. Nothing better for a steak sauce, red wine and mushrooms. We're gonna sit it down. My buddy Punk is digging it. He's gonna share this meal with me. He's ready to go. We got our ganache in the background, and this is steak au poivre, Bistro. Bon appetit. Hey Punk, how's the steak au poivre? What do you think? What do you think? Give me your thoughts. How's it going down? Pretty good, huh? All right, you don't have to say anything. I gather from the way you're. You need a glass of wine? Here, I think that's. You might need some something to wash that down with.